Hi everyone, it's Kelly. The first question for the discussion post was describe Montessori's observation of children with mental and emotional problems, and how did her observations change her ideas about the education of the young children. Well, she was saying that what really caught her attention one day was when she was watching a little girl play with the wooden cylinder blocks for an unusual extended period of time for that age and for the disability that the little girl had. And she was just amazed at how focused and intent she was on that task. And she was so undisturbed even when the other students were singing songs and doing other activities around her, and she wasn't the least bit distracted by any of that. And Maria Montessori realized that the reason behind this was because the child was so infatuated with that material that nothing else mattered, and she was able to focus on those materials for an extended period of time. And this just goes into that what Maria Montessori figured out, and this is how it kind of affected her teaching style, was that an educator needs to create an environment that is highly conducive to thinking. Because if a child is very focused and interested in a material, then they will sit there and play with it and manipulate that material as long as their attention will let them. And that's what she was trying to do, is build up a student's attention span and ability to cognitively think about that material for as long as possible. And they should also be being taught in an environment where they aren't being forced to think. They aren't being forced to sit at a desk and be preached at, especially children that are only 3 or 4 or even 5 years old. Their whole way that they learn is through play and through sensory material things. And so she stated that children should always have a material in their hands. They should always have a material, playing with the material, touching it, manipulating it, everything. And that way they aren't solely dependent on the teacher teaching them. They're dependent on themselves, and they gain self-independence. What are the benefits and limitations of her methodology? I thought there was a lot of benefits. The children are able to be hands-on, and I mean that's essentially how children learn, which is through play. It enhances their motor skills just by having something in their hands. Their fine motor skill, gross motor skills. They're able to choose their own activities, which I thought was an interesting point. Was the teacher didn't tell them what they were going to do. She just provided an environment that gave them a lot of different options, and that way the children were able to decide what activity they wanted to take part in, and that creates very useful independent skills and being able to decide things for themselves. For the limitations, I don't see many limitations other than that some educators just, probably don't agree with that form of, teaching. Some educators might think that a student should be on a strict schedule and strict what they're going to do activity-wise throughout the day, and, it be set out by the teacher and have no variation from that. Some educators think that way. But I think this method is very effective because obviously she has proof that it has worked, and I think that it would work using, maybe not all the time using these methods, but definitely incorporating them into the classroom. What did Montessori learn while observing children using the sensory materials, and how did this observation change the way Montessori teachers taught reading. Well, the children in the toddler and preschool programs were taught how to hold different writing instruments by using knobs and other tactile resources that resemble the thickness of a pencil, and I thought that was really interesting. They were able to play with these knobs that were the same thickness of a pencil, and that worked their motor skills and taught them, to use their hands for things, and that eventually will factor into how they hold a pencil. The children would trace outlines of shapes and things like they would be writing on a paper, and that teaches them, the flow of their hands on paper and the touch of the paper and all those things that, normally we don't think about being that important, but are actually the building blocks to learning how to read and write. And all the children need sensory materials to build skills for the reading and writing, and that's very important. And by doing that tactile work and the motor skill work, it focuses on the shapes and sounds of letters. Just like in school now, we always focus on the actual letters, and then we focus on the sounds and the combination of the sounds. But the Montessori really stresses the shapes and the sounds, and then once they learn that, then they learn the combination of letters, and then once they learn that, they learn the chains of the sounds and how they make words, which I think flows really well, and she had a lot of success teaching that way. I haven't seen any specific examples of Montessori in the classroom doing observations. I would like to see some though, and I would like to try it because it seems like a very effective way of teaching. Being hands-on is always the best way to go with kids that are 3, 4, even 5 years old, because they learn through play. So I would be very interested to see that in the classroom that I observe, and I hope to see some of that at least. So those are my answers.